Good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, and welcome to Cast of All Trades. Here we discuss what it takes to be a successful generalist, share tips and shortcuts to develop your skills, and explore new ideas by following curiosity. I'm your host, Orion Siebert, and in this episode we're talking about why it's better to be a generalist than a specialist. We're often encouraged from a young age to specialize, choose one sport, choose one musical instrument, choose one skill, choose one focus degree, get a specialized job like an engineer or a doctor. And while this advice is well-meaning, it's often misguided. Here are 8 reasons why you might want to think about being a generalist. Reason number 1. Generalists are better than specialists at most things. It's in the name. Generalists are better at things in general, while specialists may be better at special or focused skills. By being a generalist, you're going to be able to tackle more complex situations or a more diverse set of situations that you might come across. For example, one thing that I've noticed a lot of, especially being a college student, is that a common skill that a surprising number of students don't have is cooking. It's a very simple life skill that's very important to have, yet there are people who are graduating from high school who are leaving home that do not know how to cook the simplest meals. They don't know how to cook rice. They don't know how to cook pasta. All they know how to do is go to the grocery store, get a bunch of frozen meals, shove them in the freezer, and throw them in the microwave when they want to cook them. And half the time they can't even do that right. Sure, I'm not saying that specialists cannot cook. I know many specialists, people who are very specialized in their field who can cook. What I am saying is that by being a generalist, you're able to focus on a wider set of skills that you'll be able to just make it through better. Being a generalist means that you have the skills to be able to solve a wider set of problems that you might come across. Another example of this that I've had happen in my life quite a bit is, have you ever been in a room where there's a very strange but specific skill that's needed, and someone will say, "Can anyone do X?" or "Can anyone do Y?" and no one raises their hand? I'm the guy who raises his hand, because more often than not, that random skill happens to be useful, that I happen to have trained or happen to be able to do. For example, being able to play piano. There are plenty of people out here in Utah that can play piano, but how many of them are actually willing to do so, and how many of them are able to, on a whim, sit down and pick up basically any piece and play that to good enough? Not perfect, but good enough for whatever the use case might be. For example, playing for a church meeting or playing for an event. I've been able to do that. I've been able to have those opportunities because I became a generalist piano player, where I can play a wide variety of music. I'm used to playing pop, I'm used to playing hip hop, I've done classical, I've done video game music, I've done bits and pieces of everything, so I've been able to pick up the skills needed to play a wide variety of music. That's a version of generalizing in a still very specialized area, playing piano, but playing a wide range of genres in it. Another example of this, of the people need a random skill that they never thought they would need, is at work. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to pick locks at work because, well, someone either doesn't have the keys, someone locked the keys in the place that's currently locked, and they just need someone to break in and get those keys out. It's amazing how useful simple skills that take half an hour to learn can be in the long run. So, like I said, generalists are better than specialists at most things. So, moving on to number 2, generalists tend to gain more opportunities. This is something that I've already mentioned a bit of, but when people ask, "Hey, can anyone do X?" or "Can anyone do Y?" that's an opportunity being presented to you. People will remember, "Oh yeah, Orion, John, Tim, that person, they can do this thing. I might be able to ask them to do this thing again in the future, or I might be able to ask them to do another thing similar into the future." If anything, even if you're not getting anything directly out of it, by giving and using your skills to help others, there's a principle of reciprocity that people like to follow up on, where if you provide service for someone, they're much happier and often they feel obligated to give back to you in some way. Oftentimes many times over of what you provided for them. So yeah, and not only that, there's another aspect of generalism that tends to lead to more opportunities, and this is through skill stacking. Basically, think of it like this: in order to get a lot of opportunities as a specialist, you typically need to be the top of your field. You need to be the number one, number two, at least within like the top 5, 10% to really get the amazing opportunities. But that's not the case for generalists. For generalists, we're able to skill stack, where we're able to get like pretty good at skill number one and pretty good at skill number two, and mash those things together, and suddenly, hey, like I am in the top like 1 to 5% of people who can do X and Y put together. For example, let's go back to the music thing. There are a lot of people who want to be professional musicians, people who think, yeah, I'm going to get really good at playing guitar. I'm going to get really good at this one style of playing guitar. But how many people just play guitar? In order to become amazing and well known and famous off of playing guitar, you have to spend hundreds of thousands of hours really dedicated to your craft. And for some people that's great. For some people they can do that. But to be honest, most people can't. If you want to get similar levels of opportunity, why not diversify a bit? What if you're like pretty good at guitar, but also pretty good at singing at the same time, or also doing choreography at the same time, or you're pretty good at guitar, pretty good at marketing, because half the time trying to get opportunities is just about showing that you have the skills to do so. Half the battle is marketing, all things considered. So, yeah. Typically, generalists are able to get more opportunities because we have more skills that we can give, more chances we can get opportunities. A good example of this that's happened in my life is I have like one of my number one skills probably is my question asking ability, where I have a lot of questions that I love to ask people that are very deep, hard hitting questions. And this is something that I've done all throughout my university experience, where I would have a question in the week that I would ask my professors after every class each week. And from one of those experiences, I was able to show one of my professors that I was able to ask good questions. I was good at listening. I could pay attention. At the same time, I was asking him for advice on one of my projects I was working on. I was preparing to launch my first book, and that showed him, hey, this person can also write. They're good at staying dedicated to a project for a long period of time. I was able to show a lot of skills stacked on top of each other from these short, like 5 to 10 minute interactions once a week after class. And because of that, I was invited to join him and a couple other people on a like new research team at our university. And because of that, I've been able to get a lot of unique opportunities. I'm able to become more academically published than a number of professors at that school currently. So yeah, and I'm still in my undergrad, and there's a good chance that by joining this research team, because I was able to show all these skills I had, that I'll be able to get my doctorate pretty quickly and pretty easily. So yeah, that's just one example of how generalists are able to typically get more opportunities than specialists. So third example I wanted to go into of why you might want to be a generalist is you're more interesting to be around and to talk to. So this one is more of a subjective, my personal experience, that I love talking to people who have a wide variety of interests, people who actually scratch that. It's not that they have a wide variety of interests, it's that they have the mentality of a jack of all trades. And when I think about someone who has that mentality, they typically are deep thinkers. They're people who are willing to sit down and contemplate a wide range of ideas. They're able to connect ideas from different disciplines to like really bring out something new that I haven't thought about before. These are people who I've been able to like just sit down and chat with for hours on end, and we're able to weave the conversation through many different topics, but it's always interesting. It's people who are able to like really bring together all of their interests to say, hey, this is the stuff that I do. I think it's cool. I want to share it with you. That's way different compared to the specialist who is probably able to talk about like a couple things very well, such as they're able to talk about their speciality very well, but often to the point that no one else can understand them. That's another double-edged sword of being a specialist, that often you're so specialized in the thing that you want to do or the thing you want to talk about that no one else can talk to you about it, or a very select small subset of people are actually able to talk to you and understand you when you are going on a rant about whatever specialist thing you have. And being able to, like, being a generalist, I feel like you're able to better connect with people. You're able to sit down and say, I can talk to anyone about anything. I just have to find the right thing that they want to talk about or that they can connect with. An example of this from my life is I am very well known for my hands-on projects. That's how I do most of my learning. I'm a project-based person, and I've been able to talk to people about making why I do certain traditions. For example, for the past few years for Valentine's Day, every year I would make a metal rose and give it to someone I wanted to be better friends with. And over the years, I'd had a lot of people hear about and notice, hey, he's doing this thing. That's super cool. I want to learn about that. And then I'm able to expand out into, yeah, I make these metal roses. That's one of the things that I do. I also make other things, such as I make silver rings, I make musical instruments, and I'm able to talk to people about all these different things. And usually there'll be one of these things that they tack onto to say, ooh, that's super cool. I want to learn more about that. Or they want to really dig into these things. And that's so much better and so much different than just, hey, yeah, have you seen the game recently? Like, what's going on in the news? Or I don't know. I find it so much more interesting to be able to talk to people about the things that we're actively doing and not just the things that we're consuming and reacting to. It makes for a much more interesting life to say, hey, yeah, I'm working on this thing. This is how progress is going, but I'm having a problem with X, Y, and Z. Can you help me with that? Where people are happy and more willing to interact with people who do interesting things because it makes their life more interesting, and people want interesting lives. Oftentimes people don't really want to go to work, come home, sit on the couch, watch TV. They would much rather go out and do something. They would probably rather go and do something more fun. Sure, everyone has those days where they want to just go home and watch TV all night after a long day at work. I get that. At the same time, it leads to a very monotonous, forgetful life. If you go to work, come home, put on your dancing shoes, and go do salsa, you also have something to talk to people at the office about. Or let's say, yeah, I'm working on this salsa dancing thing after work. It's been a great time. You're able to meet more people. And overall, being a generalist, you're just more interesting to be around because you often have more things going on in your life. So I'll leave that there. Fourth reason why you might want to be a generalist is that generalists are more adaptable. This is something that sort of expands off of generalists are better than specialists at most things, since, well, generalists are either they've already have the skills that they need to adapt to a change, or they're able to quickly get the skills that they need to do so. And a good example of this, I guess going back to that musical instrument thing, is that a musician is typically able to learn a new instrument pretty quickly after they've learned one. And they're typically able to learn different styles of music much faster after they've learned, if they've taken the core qualities of is someone who's willing to learn other types of music. Essentially, the more diversified, the more generalized someone becomes in their skill set, the more likely they're going to be able to quickly adapt to other tangential or somewhat related skill sets. So probably my best example of this is that musical instrument one, where if someone does a lot of the heavy lifting learning a musical instrument on piano, let's say, it's not too hard to go from piano to another musical instrument because piano music is more difficult to read than a lot of other music because you often have chords, you have different things going on both hands. It's reading two lines of music at the same time and doing something totally different with two sets of hands. Sometimes you're doing pedal work as well. Compare that to learning, say, the violin. The violin has its own troubles, it has its own challenges, but you already have a baseline there. You already have, you can already read music. With violin, you're not going to be reading more than two notes at a time, most likely. And sure, you're going to have to learn a new set of fingering, a new set of skills to go along with it, but it's going to be much easier than learning a musical instrument from the ground up. So by slowly building up your repertoire of, I started with this, then I moved on to another skill, another skill, another skill that are each tangential to each other, you're able to more quickly adapt and grow and change to whatever situation might be needed. For example, sticking with the music thing, if you are starting a band and you want to go big, you want to make it large, oftentimes people who are starting a band, they might be great at playing music, but that's not going to matter if no one knows what you're playing, or if no one knows when you're playing, or if no one knows where you're playing. Essentially, like I said before, it's that whole marketing thing. By having other complementary skill sets to be able to adapt and to be able to build on top of each other, you're able to actually grow and do something with it. Additionally, as you learn how to learn, you learn how to teach yourself, you learn these different processes for picking up new skills, you're able to better adapt to the environment where you might need XYZ new skill because perhaps the main thing that you were doing, perhaps the main career you were doing is now kind of obsolete. What's a good example of this? As AI develops, a lot of white collar jobs are going to be displaced over the next 5 years. So by being able to diversify your skill set, even if you're diversifying within that white collar skill set, you still become more indispensable to the company or to whatever career you're doing because you're not just doing X thing because you are more ingrained into the company. So I think that's sort of the best way I can put it. It's a little hard to explain, but generally overall, generalists are more adaptable because they've gained the ability to learn new skills at a much more rapid pace than most other people might. Moving on to number 5, generalists typically have increased innovation, creativity, and problem solving through cross pollination of ideas, or what I like to call it is innovation happens at the cross section of two unlikely ideas, and that's more likely to happen with generalists than anyone else. And we see this in major developments in science, in math, in computers, in basically everything. A good example of this is when we look at Nobel Prize winners. A majority of Nobel Prize winners tend to be cross-functional people, or they tend to be generalists. Either they're newer to the field, or maybe they're specialists in a multitude of fields, and they're bringing these ideas together. And even people who we might normally think of as, yes, that person is a specialist. A good example of this is, I think, Albert Einstein, where people know Einstein as a mathematician and a physician. What they don't remember him as is a violinist. They don't know him as someone who's also an artist. A better example of this is Leonardo da Vinci. He was a painter, an inventor, a scientist, a physicist. He did everything. He did anything and everything. And by building up skill sets in all these different areas, he was able to essentially bring ideas from inventing to ideas in physics or to ideas in art, and using all these things together to make new masterpieces that no one had ever come up with before. But when we look at specialists, on the other hand, specialists are great at following the procedures made by generalists. Notice how it's not the people who are in the fields the longest that make the most changes. It's the people who know just enough to get inspired to do something, but not enough to say it's impossible. There's a reason that. So I'm trying to remember the exact way that this is phrased, but there's a commonly told story in, I want to say it's engineering, where a company wants the engineers to create something, and the engineers they have there say, no, it's impossible, we can't do it. So instead, they hire a bunch of new engineers straight out of college. They give those new, fresh, green engineers the same problem. They say, awesome, we'll get it done, we'll do it. They knew, these new engineers knew just enough to say, to be inspired and be excited to say, okay, yeah, we can do that, but not enough to quickly hand wave the idea away because it's nothing like they'd ever done before. It's often the newest people who know just enough to be able to get their feet underneath them, but not quite enough, that are able to really make a difference in the fields. Generalists tend to be better at finding novel solutions to problems because they're able to reach into different areas of study or different hobbies that they might have. And they're able to just bring all these things together into one conglomerate of, hey, yeah, I take this idea from let's say, ceramics and pottery, and this idea from math and physics, and now I can create a simple, like a simple candle-powered stove that'll heat my whole home in winter, something like that. And typically, when we're looking at innovation, creativity, problem solving, journalists tend to be more willing to experiment with non-traditional solutions because they have a diverse background of like pottery and physics and art and science, and being able to bring all these things together. Say, okay, this is what traditional science or traditional like problem solving is done. What if we take a totally different angle that we haven't seen before, that no one's even considered because no one had this same set of skills that I had? So, yeah. All right, moving on to idea number 6, a broader network and collaboration. So this is often something that's going to come as a result of you developing your skills. So as you develop your skills, you're more likely to meet and befriend a number of people. The salsa dancing after work, for example, you're going to meet a whole new crowd of people, and who knows who you're going to meet with that. Like, you're already used to. The specialist is very good and has a very strong network within their specialized field, which can be very helpful, especially like in an academic sense where you want to have like all the specialists in a certain field in a similar area, like you can bounce ideas off each other. Certainly there's merit to that. But by being a generalist, you're essentially forcing yourself to grow a broader audience, to grow a broader network of people you can communicate with, to bounce more ideas off of people, to draw greater connections. The salsa dancing class is going to force you to interact with people you may have never interacted with before, especially a more generalized and like artful skill as dance. I know when I was taking my ballroom dancing classes, I interacted with people who were in business, who were in engineering, who were in biology, who were in like nursing, who were in all sorts of fields that I never would have interacted with them otherwise because I'm tucked away in the business corner. So there's that. You're able to just meet a whole new set of people. You never know what might come of it. I know I have met a number of people who have gotten married because they happen to take a same class at the same time. Otherwise, they never would have interacted at all whatsoever because they both wanted to have fun with this new hobby that they had. Great opportunities for this are in classes, workshops, forums, shows, places where either you or other people are learning a skill, and or other opportunities that you have to show off skills like talent shows, or I don't know, just there's by being the skilled person in the room and by actively going out and seeking to learn new skills, whether that be, or perhaps you are going out and teaching your skill to other people, you're able to meet more people, perhaps do skill swaps where you teach them something, they teach you something. You have more things at your disposal to be able to go and help and meet people. So that's why, in my opinion, being a generalist, you typically get access to a broader network and greater collaboration in things. So 7 is career resilience, and this is one that I briefly touched on before, where generalists with their unique set of skills are often shaped by the needs of the business and make you more important and indispensable to the business. Say you start off as what's a good example of this? Actually, there's a podcast that I listened to called My First Million, where I believe this was something that Sean Purry did. He was a guy who built a company that was ultimately sold to Twitch. And as part of that, he was brought on to work at the company for a little while, where he was originally given a certain task to say, okay, you're going to go work with this team on this thing over here. And they decided, yeah, that's not actually all that valuable. So they spent a bit of time to analyze the company to see what would be the thing that would move the needle during these 5 years that we're here. And after analyzing the company, they went through and decided, we're going to focus on this thing right here. And they developed the skill set they needed to focus on and develop that project right there. And they became basically indispensable to the company. And over time, they were able to train other people to have that skill set and to essentially fill that position that they created. And it revolutionized the company. Well, perhaps that's overstating it, but it made a large impact on the company. Perhaps a better example is something that we might see in our more day-to-day lives of someone who might want to move up in a career position. So say, what's a good example of this? I'm just going to be I'm going to be a generalist with this and say that you have a fairly simple white collar position and you're looking at moving up the career ladder, talk to your boss and say, hey, I want to get a promotion to this position. What would I need to do for it? Like, if you work with them, they'll often give you a list of, here are the skills you would need, here are the things you would need to develop by X time. So that now you can go work on that. As you work on that over time, you're developing your skills that make you more indispensable to a company. And as you gain those skills, remind your boss later that, hey, we made this plan, I did these things, this is your promise, so are you going to live up to it or not? And if they don't, then hey, you have a bunch of new skills that you learned that you got that you can use to apply to a new position at a different company. So yeah, even if you lose your job, your skills, like your wide set of skills, can give you many avenues that you could go down to still make money. Something that I have access to that will definitely help me down the line is if I ever want to make some extra cash, I learned how to be a piano tuner, and it's like a very simple skill, a simple service that I learned in like a couple hours, maybe a day or two. And now I can go out basically for the rest of my life and see if anyone wants their piano tuned and make like a couple $100. So there we go. By developing your skills, you're not only giving yourself more career resilience, you're giving yourself more career opportunity, as you never know what might happen. Finally, last but not least, number 8 is typically, I like to believe this, that generalists have an increased sense of self-confidence, where there's something about knowing that you can perform a certain skill to a certain level that instills a sense of self-confidence in you, and be able to look back and say, yeah, I did that thing. I made X, I can do Y, and be able to know that if you're in a situation where people do ask, we need someone who can do X, that you can raise your hand and say, yeah, I can do that. And you can walk up and show up everyone else and say, well, and prove that, yes, I have the skills to be able to do this thing. There's something about having an undeniable stack of proof behind you that builds up confidence in yourself to know that, yeah, I know how to split wood super well. I know how to start fires. I know how to tune pianos. I know how to make things. I know how to cook. And be able to have this diverse set of skills, like I've said before, it gives you opportunities, but it also gives you a sense of a peace of mind knowing that you have these abilities and they're never going to be able to be taken away from you, because that's knowledge in your head. So there we go. Those are my 8 reasons why I think everyone should at least consider to be a generalist. If you've enjoyed this episode of Cast of All Trades, I have 3 super easy things that I'd like you to do that would mean the world to me. 1, subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. 2, while you're in the podcast app of your choice, give this show a 5-star review. It helps us reach more people and in turn helps us change lives through generalism. 3, finally, share this episode with a friend or two, someone you think would gain a lot from the show. Word of mouth is the best way to help a podcast grow, and if your friend likes the show, they'll thank you for introducing them to it. It's a win-win. With all that said, best of luck, tradesmen, and I'll talk to y'all later. Ciao.